poetry for, I don't know if anyone's read any of the poems by any chance for any of the books, but I don't necessarily have what I would call happy poetry. So I apologize in advance for that. But one of my hopes with even darker poems or more cultural poems is to try to find some glimmer of light in the darkness, and vice versa. I think any good poem that has a more positive feel to it should probably be addressing the darkness in some way too, right? That's kind of who we are. So hopefully you enjoy some of these poems. What I wanted to do is read a few poems first from Skin Memory. Where am I? A few poems from Skin Memory, which came out in November. And then I'll read some newer poems. And then a few poems from the other book, As One Fire Consumes Another. I always like to start readings with a particular poem because it was for my mother, and she passed away 5 years ago now. And from what I understand, she used to read books into her belly when she was pregnant with me. So I don't know. There's something about that. I don't know if that has anything to do with who I am now and what I do, but it feels like it might have. So from my mother, this poem is called Death is a Work in Progress. My mother says, "Fox," while gesturing toward an old red wagon abandoned in our yard for decades. Fox. A word so cavernous her entire body vanishes into it. Body of misfiring electrons, scattered images, no contexts. Body that is mainly just a body now. No other animal knows how to be this incomplete. I think if you were a fox, coyotes would have eaten you by now. But I say, yes, Mom, I'll climb into that fox and let you pull me through the high grass one more time. So coming from the Boston area, even though I live in Portland for 11 years now, but coming from there originally, when one thinks of the West, one is getting that information from Westerns or from books. And so this next poem for me was my interpretation of the West, I guess you could say, from books when I was younger, mixed in with some grief. This poem is called It Was a Golden Age of Monsters. The sickle moon bobs like a child's paper boat between silhouettes of paper mountains. I am watching steam swell off a herd of bison in a black and white book about the American West. Too young to read much into what I'm reading. The world is all image, unfinished rail track and Douglas fir, level saw cuts, rings tracing us back to the beginning. The dozen spears projecting from a felled paper beast are replaced the next chapter by rifles and iron in that same kind of falling. Tomorrow, it will snow, and my father will drive me down to the hospital again. Snowflakes crazing about our headlights, paper moon between the paper mountains. I will be thinking about bison, about blood on the page, not the pillow. The road that curls home always seems to erase itself, and the steam coming off it, frail as breath. I have a really short poem here. So right now, just being in Portland had just dealt with the wildfires and the smoke and everything else, which has been really interesting the past few weeks. But that got the smoke is the reason I decided to include this poem from the book. Back in the early 90s, when I would have been 10 maybe, I went through, 1991 was The Perfect Storm, which they made a movie with, who was in George Clooney and Mark Wahlberg and all that. That was a real thing. Being just 20 minutes from the coast in Massachusetts, we went through that. Actually saw our apple tree in our yard physically uproot. Just the whole thing just came up. We lost shingles. It was a blast. And being a stupid little boy as I was, more daring than I was intelligent, I ran out into it. And my father had to like run out and bring me back in because I was so excited. I was like, "Look at the wind!" So this, in thinking of it in hindsight, I had come up with this poem, which is called "A Brief History of a Perfect Storm." Our apple tree shakes loose its last fruits and bends, nightmared, over my boarded up bedroom window. Dry, swirled palette of sky, Monet's overhead. Everything not nailed down is dancing midair, weightless, like the silence after a mother's eulogy. If there's one thing the televised war has failed to teach me that I am learning now, it's the crisp, clean sound of a body splitting. I still remember the sound of the tree, actually, that you can actually hear the tree coming out of the ground, which is quite a memorable sound. Up there with hearing my children for the first time. I have, I'm not sure for those who have ever done this before, where you write a poem, kind of sort of in correspondence with another poem. So I want to read this first. So this is a very short poem, very famous poem by Mark Strand, an amazing American poet. The name of the poem is Keeping Things Whole. It is one of those poems that I think is probably taught in many, many schools too, but it's one of the poems that first brought me to poetry. So Keeping Things Whole by Mark Strand. In a field, I am the absence of field. This is always the case. Wherever I am what is missing. When I walk, I part the air, and always the air moves in to fill the spaces where my body has been. We all have reasons for moving. I move to keep things whole. That was Mark's beautiful poem. And those last lines, we all have reasons for moving, I move to keep things whole, is really what prompted this poem, and it comes up at the end of the poem. So this is for Mark Strand. The title is also the first line. So, there is still something thin to swing from madly over the glory-faded cottonwood. A different kind of rope and knot, sure, and a different purpose. But our limbs haven't changed much, all assent and greed. The sky yielding just enough of itself to urge us higher. They say there's nothing left to worship. I'd agree, if not for the dust kicked up every slow, steady swipe we take at erasure. What our grandfathers said their fathers did. The haunted house of our bodies, creaking open, almost forgiven. Lately, the dead calm of a summer by the lake, where someone told me someone once hung a child for loving another child, has lost its grace. What we say to the fire in our lungs doesn't change. It's the same tree. I'd assume we throw the same shadow, long and dark, over its grasses and stone. We all have reasons, Mark. I hope I am swinging to remember. With that one, actually, this is something I do very, very frequently across both books and even newer poems. I think this is something that I've grown to be very comfortable with myself, is internalizing, I guess, either cultural, political things and trying to make, as opposed to a poem just being about one thing, trying to make connections between different things. So from his poem, suddenly it turned into, you know, a poem about a certain part of America's dark history, but then also something about myself also. You know, it's me sitting there swinging. Really, this came from that Mark's poem, but also me with my kiddos that are toddlers, swinging on a tire swing. And I just thought to myself, it's just one of those things, right? As a writer, things just pop in your head. And I was just like, what else may have swung from this tree? And then that's kind of where this whole poem was birthed. So every time I do any sort of swinging with my kids, I always kind of have in the back of my head that I'm trying to, even though I'm just having fun, there's always in the back of my head that I'm swinging to remember other things that have not voluntarily swung. I told you I was going to be happy. I think I have, was it one more? Nope, two more, okay. In this little book. I see some messages popping in. I'll get to them, I promise. This next poem is called Symptoms of Shelter. Oh, and one of the things I write about very frequently, and I think it actually is necessary given my privileged status, is to recognize the privilege within the poems. I think for me, I find that absolutely essential, because if I'm going to be writing about political, cultural, historical events, which I, you know, fairly often do, I think, you know, without recognizing my own privilege within that feels very inauthentic. You know, I am always trying to write about my experience within the framework. Whether it's about being a male, which will come up later too, kind of I'm always terrified of men also, oh man. And you know, how I'm raising my son, how my father raised me, and how his father raised him, and what gets passed down, and my race, and many other things. So this poem is one of those types of poems. It's called Symptoms of Shelter. If I could reconcile the fullness of the moon, of the black oak tonight's moon illuminates, with the bodies I've seen in photographs hanging from an oak at night in just this light. There are only so many perfect moments allowed us. Why must they all end with the sky constricting, bleeding, the trees emptying of birds? Buckshot in the distance, dog bark, and good night. Everywhere the dead and nothing to be done. This familiar field, now going strange. How lucky I have been to love and love blindly. Thank you. Hopefully the sudden torrential downpour and thunder outside is not, you guys can't hear that, hopefully. I just had one more, if I may, one more poem from this book. Come on, tabs, work your magic. There we go. So every reading I like to do at least one poem I've never read before, and I think I'm gonna actually read a couple that I've never read before. It keeps me on my toes too. Instead of all the ones you maybe see me closing my eyes for because I've memorized them, it keeps me on my toes. I have a series of poems, 3 or 4 poems in skin memory that all start with "on being told," like that idea of, you know, when someone tells me this thing. And this one is called "On Being Told, White is a Color Without Hue." The contrast between a cloud's white and the white of my teeth before sinking into meat is a matter of palates, a matter of mercy. Beyond the upslope, a mountain forms through the fog. The cap is white, and the warm milk on my bedside. Dove white, maggot white, and the bones on my plate. The blurry edges of stars, trailing off white. No winter is forever white, and the ones that are. It's a matter of mercy, really. Wedding white, ghost wrapped in sheet white, as contrasted against the white of a sheet merely ghosted on a clothesline by the wind. Against the whiteness of a sheet pulled back from a face that must be identified, and the face beneath. Thank you. I see some nice comments. So thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Kathleen, yes, I will. Kathleen Donnelly. Hello. Thank you. And thank you. That's really nice to see that. So weird, just the echo chamber of one's own room. So thank you very much. It's nice seeing those little comments. If I may, I'd like to read a few newer poems. I haven't been writing much this year, to be honest. For the first time in 21 years since I've been writing poetry, this is the first year where I haven't been able to write very much. I think pandemic-wise, politically, just everything, kids, everything that's going on, it's been tough to remind myself how much poetry matters to me personally, not to the world. But so I have been able to get some poems out this year, though, and I'd like to read a few of them. This one is actually the most recent poem I've written, which is probably a month ago at this point. This poem is, well, I guess, kind of sort of about the pandemic, the quarantine, but what scares me the most for my children is how they're going to be raised not knowing how to approach other people. You know, my children are 4. This pandemic started when they were 3.5. Who knows how long it's going to go? And that they're raised to not touch other people. They're raised to walk away from other people if they try to, they're raised to not shake hands, not hug strangers or whatever, not to touch things. I'm like, nope, you're not allowed on those playgrounds. Everything's about not touching, not being with other people. And that's like the focus. So that really scares me about how this generation will be raised. So that has something to do with it, is that idea of fearing other people due to this. It's called Self-Portrait as Lacuna. What do we do with a body severed from other bodies? With a child who cannot weave herself into and out of embrace? When the plastic stars glued to her ceiling supplant the celestial, dreams and hungers cast only so high, prayers smacked hard against drywall and blue paint. Into the burn barrel out back, everything I hoped would someday wear her name. Family, only a state away, already dimming to memory. Only my face to remind her of her own. A miniature dollhouse world, prematurely on fire. This afflicted air, breath. When breathing becomes the barbed fence between neighbors. Cover yourself, love, please. It is my splintered cross to keep you safely distanced from humanity. Here, another promise I didn't mean to break. Here, another kiss as apology. A board book to show what it was like before. Talking animals to prove the world can be wildly unquiet and innocent. A sky made up of myths and stars. Honest to goodness stars. All gas and flame and unobstructed whimsy. Here is someone else's tree to carve your initials into. Here, love, is the tree of my body to learn to climb. Far from here, from me, to touch whatever's still up there, beautifully above us. Thank you. Yeah, that one hurt a little bit to write. Thank you so much. Oh my goodness. I have some, there are all these things coming here. Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, if anyone, there are some wonderful comments, and yeah, feel free if there are any poems, questions about a certain poem or any I don't even craft questions, whatever, you absolutely feel free to pop them in there, and we'll read some of them soon. I look forward to it. This next poem is, similar theme. It's called Fever. When you hold your child's body like this, cold as unexcavated earth, wet with want, making oaths to anything that will listen, please and God, and the usual silences. So much useless splendor cradled feetally between raw open hands. When the field just keeps going without you, or so you're told. When anatomies collide with night, dark steepled night. When you're reminded it's all just machinery, rusting. This shame, not a halo taken off once the breathing steadies again. And again, when that something of the stars still, and again, when that something of the stars that's still in us blinks in and out of existence. Displaced cathedrals, gut-shot worship, this bittering. When disordered, your heart is that rarely seen bird no one knows how to name. Will it mourn or devour its young? Congregate a nest from healthy or broken limbs. When lowering that tiny trembling body down to its ill-kept bed, studded in plush and perfect need. This early hour before the world wakes up, when rubbing your hands together just might spark the required warmth, a song returning. On the wind, bird song and wail, the field extends, the shame intact. That one had, obviously since the title's Fever, it's probably a given, but my son in particular has a habit of getting fevers and going to the hospital type one. So that one was written maybe a few weeks after I had time to process it emotionally, a few weeks after a particularly bad one where he ended up in the hospital and had a breathing thing and everything just from a rough fever. This is before COVID. It was actually just when COVID was hitting. So we're like, could it be this new thing that people are just beginning to talk about? But it wasn't. But it's tough how little we can control in the world, especially the things that we're in charge of. There are things we're responsible for that we can't control is a terrifying feeling. So I was going to read, if I may, two more poems that are newer, not from one of the books. And so I have, one of the things I've been working on is, over the course of about a year, I guess, is a series of poems. I have almost a dozen now, where I take two different historical figures, mythological figures, contemporary figures. They could be artists. They could be people who have, I guess you could say, famously suffered. They could be musicians. Cthulhu shows up in one of them, for those who are familiar with Lovecraft's most famous creation. So I think Chad just waved there. Go Cthulhu. So but my goal in that really is trying to find two individuals, real or fictionalized, that are very, 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 very different. But somehow in either maybe looking at one's art and then reading the history of the other one or something like that, I find something that I can combine and try to turn into one story, which I've found really nice, really meaningful, since one of my favorite things to do with my own poetry is to try to create a juxtaposition between, past and present, or personal and political, or, I like those juxtapositions. So I think I'm going to read two, if I may, of those. This first one, I know history is not taught the way that it perhaps once was in school, so hopefully everyone knows who Emmett Till is, and if not, we're on Zoom, so you can Google it, which is nice. But so this poem is Emmett Till / Edward Hopper, so the famous painter. And the way that I often come about these is looking at all these Edward Hopper paintings I have in a book and finding, especially some of the key ones that people are familiar with, with getting those images of a railroad crossing. There's a railroad going across an old abandoned house with weeds growing out of it. There's, of course, a bunch of paintings of, pretty much, like a half-naked woman looking very lonely, staring out a window. One with this clapboard church, and getting all those images and seeing how I can filter them into a conversation about America, which leads to Emmett Till. These are very, very interesting and fun poems to write, honestly, trying to create these worlds. So this one is Emmett Till, Edward Hopper. In your mouth, 1,000 unpainted churches, steeples snapped off like baby teeth in an apple, rusted bells trying so hard to ring, ringing. Crows along your restless edges, where clapboard meets sky, then storm. The sky is always storming. Skin can be its own broken republic. Everywhere, overgrown rail tracks, and a few white people who don't know what to say to each other. Not anymore. Truth is married to the surface of things. The surface is a lighthouse overlooking wreck after wreck. No ships here anymore. Nothing left to cradle and swing safely into harbor. All sorts of things swing. All sorts of women sit on the knife's edge of the bed, half naked, staring out a half naked window. All sorts of men are tossed over bridges after whistling a little tune. Come back, crows, bells, edges. In you, let the night see its face. My big worry about these poems is always making sure that I do justice to the person that the poem is really about. The poem is not about Edward Hopper. So my fear is always that I'm not doing enough justice, and I always hope I am, because as you'll see with the one other one I'll read too, I try to focus on the second name, which is usually either an artist or not the person that went through necessarily the struggle. And so it seems like 3/4 of the poem is about that other person before bringing in the new context. So I hope I did his memory justice. This next poem, at least in terms of the artist, it's more contemporary. So this is Rosa Parks, Banksy. Yes, that Banksy. So obviously with Banksy right there, I try to always work with the more famous pieces so that I don't need an explanatory note with the poem, right? But we have a Molotov cocktail of flowers. We have the girl letting go of the red balloon. And I think those are the only two that this is heavily based on. So Rosa Parks and Banksy. Incendiary still, although the flowers in truth were meant for your mother, whose life, in the way of lives, was thrashing about inside while nothing in her eyes recognized your face. Still, the same impact as a Molotov cocktail, the same discolored water and burning color, thirsting roots contrasted against a stagnant sky. Is it a prayer, this gesture, this song? Someone tells you to stand. Someone tells you to stand, and the world decides just for a time to listen. That little girl, inside the woman, inside the bus, releases one impossibly red balloon. The string, a goodbye, a final goodbye. Where one's body's now names, where one's skin, texture, amalgam, that heart-shaped ascension our mothers promised in their lucid moments would come with a little faith. pulled from the bus, handcuffed and unforgiven. The girl still thrashing inside smiles. Smiles. Tomorrow these streets will run red with unrequited love. Oh, thank you. Yeah, I really was hoping these types of poems weren't going to be pertinent anymore. But you know what? I think just to get things a little more organic, I'm going to look at some questions. I've been reading long enough. I've heard my own voice for long enough. Let's see. Questions. If Kathleen Donnelly, how you doing? If you are here in person, you may be selling books. Can you tell us where they are available? Oh, I actually paid her to do this. She's a plant. Thank you, Kathleen. Of course. I mean, apart from the usual Amazon, Barnes & Noble, blah, blah. Sure, I mean, on my website, but of course those take you to links to places, the publishers' websites, etc. If anyone wants I hate to do this for reading, but I was asked. If you want a signed copy, something more personal, then just do it, just do it myself. My email is on my website too. So the website's just johnsibley.williams.com. Email is jswilliams1307@gmail.com. You just say hi to me if you want. Or of course, just Amazon, et cetera, et cetera. So I go under John Sibley Williams because John Williams is, you'd never find me Googling me. And I'm from Boston, the Boston Pops. So John Williams didn't work out. So yeah, John Sibley Williams, I think all my books, I assume, are still on Amazon. I don't think anything's out of print or anything. So thank you so much for asking. But if you want something personal, just shoot me an email. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Oh, thank you, lovely people. That's so nice. Many other writers would agree with you. It has been difficult to write. Yes, it has. Any ideas why? Oh my Lord, yes. Many ideas why it would be difficult to write this year, and that's true. So many of my friends are like that. I have to say, I do feel, I'm not much of one for feeling envy. I have plenty of faults. Usually envy isn't one of them, but it's seeing all these friends posting all these new poems, and it's just like, nothing. Part of it for me is that I'm finding it very difficult to get inspired this year. I mean, I work as a writing coach and do workshops and all that kind of stuff, but my own writing, I just find it hard to concentrate on, partly because my brain is elsewhere. I mean, to the point where I'm sure, like a lot of you, I don't sleep very well for pretty much the whole year. Two, and the kiddos and everything else, but really part of it for me is just, this is the first time in my life where poetry hasn't been the answer to whatever the issue was. And I started writing poetry when I was 20, 21, something like that, and I'm 40 now. And I wrote it out of passion, not because I have never studied it at college, so you guys are already on the right track. I didn't study or poetry at college at all. I didn't like it growing up. I wrote fiction since I was a little kid. And then when I was 20, 21, I was sitting by some water in a little dock in New York when I lived in New York, and I had my feet dangling in the water, and all that kind of summery stuff. And then these words started coming to me, and I didn't know what they were, and I didn't know how to process them, because it wasn't like, before I'd have the idea of, ooh, that's a cool idea for a plot, or that's a cool character that should be involved. And it wasn't that, it was just words, and I didn't know what to do with the words at all. And I was just like, but it felt important, when you're something inside of you is just like, no, this isn't something you're supposed to forget. It's not a passing thing. And I knew that, so I got up from where I was and raced back to my car, and that was before, right, hopefully people who write poetry, you always need to have something to write with, or at least your notes on your phone. You always have to have something to write with. And as a fiction writer, I didn't need that. So I ran back to the car and I was looking, I found a magic marker. That's all I could find. And I ended up writing my very first poem. It was called The Dock. It was the worst thing imaginable, as was probably the first 5 years worth of poems I wrote, just god awful. But I actually wrote it on my body because I didn't have any paper. So I actually used a magic marker, and I was writing the first lines of a horrible poem on my body. And then I ended up going home and looking in a mirror and writing out what I had written on myself. That was the first poem I ever wrote. Big fake tattoos. So for me, it's so passionate. It's always been, as opposed to I carefully study it, but it's from the passion, as opposed to, you know what I mean? You study it first and then you enjoy it. I enjoyed it first before I understood what poetry was, which is why it took me a lot longer than many people to write it okay. I won't say well, but write it okay. Some people write a book, 2 years after college. And it's taken me, or 15 years of writing poetry before my first book came out, and 18 years of writing poetry before these two books came out. So it's all about passion. And this is the first time in my life this year where the poetry isn't the answer. And I'm not sure what is. It's always been poetry. So for me, that's the big reason why I'm not writing. That's a very difficult question. Yeah, keep going. Good to hear. I'm not alone in this. No, you are not. Thank you. What advice would you give to someone who suffers social anxiety? All right, I'm gonna put on my cap here. I would love to perform my poetry. Oh, thank you so much. Oh, thank you. Let's see. I'm not, is that your entire full name? Is it? I know. Is it? Is it okay to? Can I call you Umal? I see U-M-A-L is the first 3 letters, but I don't see a space. I'm not sure. But thank you so much. That's so nice. Oh, social anxiety, me too. We were just discussing it with Chad and Bonnie. I have a borderline panic attack before every reading. And I've given hundreds and hundreds of readings over the years. I have a panic attack in front of 2 people reading. I still haven't been able to bring myself to read in front of my wife, and that's 1 person. So the thing for me, how I get over it, I'm very, very introverted. Honestly, if I didn't have kids, this quarantine thing wouldn't matter whatsoever to me. If I can go an entire week without seeing another living being, I'm happy with that. So not that I don't like people, I love people, but I recharge my batteries being alone. So I totally get it. And poetry events always make me very panicky in a good way. So how I get over it personally is that it's all about the poem, which is partly why I memorize so many poems. If you see me with my eyes closed at different points when I'm reading, is because for me, I just focus on the poetry. That's how I get through poetry readings. As opposed to it being, some other people are just, you have to, don't look at the audience or pretend the audience is wearing underwear or whatever it is that people get over anxiety. My thing is, if you care about the work that you've written, if you're passionate about the words, then just give yourself over to the words and try as best as you can to erase the rest of the world. Especially in in-person readings, where you actually have people and they're making sounds or hopefully applauding or clicking or sighing or whatever they're doing. I do get energized by that, but mainly I just try to sink myself into the words I'm speaking. So, sometimes I've been shaking before I get up to a podium. And then as soon as I open my mouth, I look at the page and I open my mouth, everything goes away and everything's fine. So that would be my advice, I guess, in terms of social anxiety. It's all about the poem. It's not about you. It's not about the audience. It's about the poem. Nothing else matters. And I think people notice that. I've noticed with readings, like the comments I'll get afterwards, people seem to like more the readings that I've given where I've given myself over to the poem and erased everything else. I'm not chatting with the audience. I'm just, this is the material. I'm closing my eyes and I'm giving it to you as best I can. Those seem to be the readings that people like the best. So you can do it. I promise you can do it. There's a video somewhere on YouTube of my very first poetry reading from 12 years ago or something. It's somewhere out there. I don't know. I don't remember. It was back in Boston where I lived there. And you can actually see my hands on a podium doing this. And I was only reading like 3 poems. So it's okay. I promise it's okay. I've been doing this the entire time while I read. Oh, thank you. Would you show us, again, the covers of your books? I paid you also. So there we go. As One Fire Consumes Another. That's from Orison Press, I wonder what. And they both came out last year. And then Skin Memory with the University of Nebraska Press. They came out in November. Thank you very much. It helps to have plants in the audience. Hey, look at that. Someone moved to Woburn, Massachusetts, the town right next to my town. I went to the prom at Woburn. Hello, Massachusetts. Hello. I love Massachusetts, but I don't. Oh, thank you for first name. I don't miss it. I love Portland. Yeah, absolutely. So, what advice do you have for someone just getting started with writing? Okay, this will be the last one for now. I'll read a couple more poems real quick. Oh boy, that's the big one, right? That's the big one. Yes, thank you for sharing, Liz. Um, advice for that's the hardest thing, right? Advice. There's a million things you can say. Everyone, and yes, are you supposed to go to college? Yes, you're supposed to do this. Yes, you're supposed to do that. For me, it's really just about a couple things. I do believe that not necessarily that writers are born, but I do think that the creative spirit is something that you have or you don't have. Do you know what I mean? Just the creative part. I honestly do believe that the skills and everything else can come later. It certainly did with me. What the main thing that matters is a genuine passion to want to express yourself in this form, or in multiple forms, of course. But for me, it was just loving language, loving how words sound and play off each other, loving the ambiguity of language. It's so important, is what, this word means this to this person, this to this person, so therefore should I use this word or not, because it might have unexpected connotations. There's just so much that I absolutely love about language. And as long as you love the form that you're doing, you love painting, you love writing, whatever it is, that's the main thing. And you just don't stop, is it. And it's not, you can't be hard on yourself whatsoever, but I think you have to hold yourself up to the highest standard possible. I mean, when I finished that first poem on my body, that was the worst thing I've ever written still in my entire life, even worse than a middle school grade, term paper. Still, when I wrote that, something clicked in my head immediately. I was like, okay, now what do I do? Like, now what do I do? There's more to this now. So now I need to write some poems, and I need to write a book, and I need to do this. And like, it already just popped in my head. It's like, this is the trajectory. And it's because I was so passionate about it. I'm like, I'm going to work on this, and I'm going to get good at this. And there's no, I'm not going to accept no on that. I'm going to do this. So as long as you're passionate about it, that's all that matters. Because it's just about being, in this day and age, right? I mean, everything from prose poetry to highly experimental poetry, to couplets and stanzas and traditional structures, to including other languages, maybe your first language, into poems, to taking blocks of text from history and putting those prose blocks within the poem. There is no shortage of ways that you can express yourself. So it's just playing with language, finding the whatever structures and voices seem to express what you want to express in the clearest way, and just keep writing and writing and writing and writing and reading more than just American poets, and more than I do read predominantly poets from the 20th and 21st century. Not as much the older myself, but I have read them. But you have to read poems from other countries. You have to read poems from other cultures. You have to, and you get something from everything. And then slowly over the course of years and years and years, all of those little things you've picked up become part of who you are as a writer. So just write, read, and write terribly, and write terribly, and write terribly. And at some point, it's slightly less terrible. And after 20 years, it might be being able to publish a book less terrible. So that's good. But that's really it. Just be genuine. You have to be genuine, and you have to be vulnerable. I've heard a comedian discuss vulnerability in that, and it's like, if you're a comedian, you have to put yourself on display. You can't just go up there and be cool. Nobody's gonna laugh at you if you're being cool. You have to show your vulnerabilities, your authentic vulnerabilities. And I think that's a big part of poetry for me also, is you have to be able to cut yourself open, not in a grotesque way, cut yourself open, put yourself out there, and and try to word it in a way that people will get a certain emotional reaction from it. But to me, it's just about being yourself and not being afraid of that. So thank you, great questions. Oh boy, oh my goodness. Okay, so I guess a couple more poems. Does that sound about right? Just a couple more. I'm gonna. All right. Oh boy, I'm gonna cut down here. Okay, so I wanted to start. Let's see. So this is the As One Fire Consumes Another, which is significantly more cultural political than the other one, which mixes a number of things. But I'd like to. All the poems here are all prose poems. I wrote the entire book in a structure that I wanted to look a little bit like newspaper columns, which was quite a challenge. write, I don't know, 80 poems or so like that. But I think it worked out. I like this structure. It's fun. It's good to test yourself. I'm going to start with a couple real quick, more personal before moving into the political ones. This poem is called Understudies. In our parents' bedroom, exchanging overalls for ties, bras, I am playing mother again. And Tyler, for those 10 minutes between breakfast and church, you can be dad's hard, open palm. Both your feet drown in his shiny black Sunday shoes. It takes time for the world to whiten around the temples, to scar. You are trying and failing to find something awful enough to pray away, scuffing your big boy pockets with miracles that sound like stopped watches. Now, hold me, how they say they held each other once. Tell me how pretty I was when your arms first danced my waist around a crowded Elks Lodge to a song that ended in two suns and a need to atone. And I will show you how to be forgiven without asking the sky, how to love without using your mouth. Yeah, so this, this is one of those poems, I think like the others, I'm just gonna toss it out there. So poetry is not, I know some people don't know, but I'm sure you all do, but poetry is not nonfiction. I don't have a brother. My father has never hit me before. I have all sorts of characters. I treat them as characters to me. They're characters in my poems. So I actually got that from a Peppa Pig story when I was reading to my kids, where Peppa Pig, see, when people ask where do poems come from, apparently from Peppa Pig. Peppa and her little brother are trying on the parents' clothes in the kind of a gender opposite thing, and they're trying on the parents' clothes and pretending to be the parents walking around. And I created a whole story about my brother and an abusive father in religion from one night of Peppa Pigging. So it comes from everywhere. This poem is called Sovereignty. 200 green plastic army men circle around a tea set. All the matchbox cars are up on blocks in the yard. While my daughter's dolls wage wars with the flamingos basking in a flagpole's swollen shadow, the mower is making birdshot of each dandelion head. For once, summer is what it seems. A trick of the light, a mistranslation, a castle of air. And all fathers are invented gods. And now I am a father, inventing a world where matchstick sailboats can set the entire ocean ablaze. My children take turns pulling me around our safe green box of earth in a red wooden wagon. It doesn't take much to convince the sky we have no idea how to hold it. I'm going to shoot through. Ready? Here we go. Okay. Short poems go. This poem's called Dear Noah. Yes, that Noah. I have a couple of dear poems in there, epistolary poems. There is no boat big enough to unruin, no flood more violent than our own. Like a ghost haunted by itself, we move along old scars, terrified of what would happen if left to heal. A blast in Kabul last night, 6 bodies, 3 children. Walls are being built along the southern lip of a country right now as we speak. What else would it sound like if not a God voice? A threat undercut with just enough hope to slip an arc through. I cannot blame you anymore for tracing your finger over imagined horizons. My brother returned home husked and empty. So many papers collect on our rickety porch. Even Everest is underwater. All right, I had a couple more, but I'm not going to. We're very late, and I definitely don't want people to have to say later. So I'm just going to read one more. To put that away, I know this poem. I'm just going to read One more poem, and we'll see if there's time for another questions. But I guess the last poem is called The Crossing. Tell me what not to do with heaven-faced children, torn between parents, torn apart by a river, tearing a long muddy scar into this long and lengthening landscape. Then tell me again why we are the only animal bound by maps, shifting allegiances. Tell me what not to forgive of the stars, what color skin my skin is forbidden to touch, what heart my heart cannot possibly hold without breaking. Don't tell me the best way to break a body without damaging its shell. We all know how that story ends. Ask the bridled horses. Ask mothers waiting on docks for warships never to return. Ask any long, cold winter night in any part of any country that any child has ever fled to find herself no closer to home. Please tell me, what road that begins in ruin ends somewhere beautiful? Yeah, that'll be the last poem I read. So thank you so much. I don't know. It's right at the end there, and everyone's very busy. So I thank you for the comments there. Yes, poetry is fiction. Thank you, John. Oh, favorite poets coming out of what country? Oh my Lord. Honestly, it depends on where I am at the time in my life. When I first started really studying poetry in my early 20s, I found definitely Spanish language poets to be particularly accessible and lush, and their use of language quite worked for me. And then after I read as much Spanish language poetry as I could, then I seemed to have moved on to kind of the polar opposite of Eastern European, very, very high language. And I don't know, I did a pirate accent there. And it was, and I went, so very, just dense and heady. I think it was because there was so much heart in Spanish poetry. Then I started really getting into Eastern European poetry, which is very heady. And I mean, I read everything now, but there's an incredible, through the University of Nebraska Press has an incredible series every year of African poetry, not African-American poetry, but African poetry, which is incredible. There's also I don't know what press puts it up. There's also an incredible annual book series of Middle Eastern poets and things like that. So I read whatever whatever resonates with me. But in terms of other countries, honestly, it depends on what you're looking for. If you're looking for a lot of heart and fluidity of language, if you're looking for how to kind of compact and make dense, bigger concepts, different cultures seem to be quite good at those different things. I know we got to go there. Thanks. You're welcome. Yes, I don't know. I think that was all the questions. Did I see any other questions? I don't know. Are there any final questions before we head out?
Yeah, it sounded great, John.
Did it? I could only hear my own voice, and I don't like the sound of that, so I couldn't tell. Thank you.
It was good, and yeah. There's quite a few I was trying to see. I had quite a few people kind of come in, so that's good.
Yeah, thank you so much.
There's one question here at 4:54 from Serena.
Oh,
that's a really good question.
How far do you have to be from something incredibly sad? Oh, great question. I don't know about that. Is a great question. That is something that I very much am like. Even if it's not a sad poetry, anything. Years and years before I had the books out, and I was more starting out, I guess you could say. And I had a collection that was all like kind of travel poems. I was backpacking through Europe at one point in my life, in my 20s, that kind of thing. And even then, I found myself taking notes during the trip, usually of imagery, feelings, stuff like that. But I had a lot of trouble actually writing the poems about travel while traveling. And they weren't sad poems necessarily. Not happy poems, as you probably guessed from my outlook, but not sad ones. And but I had to wait till I got home to kind of digest the entirety of the travel and what that travel meant to me. So for me, it's not like there's a specific time frame or something like that. But for me, it's more a matter of when I'm going through it, I often, even with grief, different people's passings, my mother's different people, years with my kids, I often will jot down notes about how I'm feeling. But I feel like I need to be able, the emotional distance to step back, and it's a week, a year to step back and look at the entirety of the situation, how the entirety of the situation changed me to be able to write poetry about it. So, and again, sometimes it's only a couple days, and sometimes it's a year or more. But that's a very good question.
So it looks like you got a reading on Saturday as well. I saw that. I got an email from Sugar House. It looks like
I do. Yes, the wonderful, wonderful people at Sugar House and the Utah Humanities. Saturday.
Great
Saturday. At my 6 p.m. whatever time it is for other people.
Yeah, that'd be good. I saw that pop up.
Thank you.
Now you can be nervous until Saturday. It looks like you weren't quite aware of that yet. Taking one week at a time.
Oh yeah, well, I had it on a piece of paper, but I just forget. Yes, one reading at a time for us socially awkward people.
Oh, you did great.
Yeah, this was an amazing reading, and thank you for answering all these questions. And just from the look of all these comments on chat, everybody is thrilled to have you.
Oh, well, thank you.
We have an L. Barrett at Northeast, everyone there at 459. That would be the president of our college.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sharon Carr's here, and she's got a whole class going, watching on the screen. So you are blown up somewhere in a classroom somewhere, which is good.
Well, there are different ways of being blown up, so as long as it's the okay one.
This is the okay one.
All right. Well, thank you. It's been a great privilege and honor, really. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. This has been absolutely wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it a lot. Any last words of wisdom?
I hope you're not asking for words of wisdom from me.
No pressure.
I have no words of wisdom whatsoever.
You can always throw that on Chad too.
Yeah. Just for those who are able to do it, to try to use poetry or art, whatever your art form is. And art form could be anything. It could be making jewelry, whatever your creative expression is, to try to use that right now during these almost unprecedentedly difficult times in a number of different ways, to try to use that personally, maybe to get through it or to find some purpose in life. People subscribe to different philosophies, right? I'm not a big fan of Aristotle and all that. I'm not sure what happiness is. I don't know how to define happiness. So I don't know how I can personally believe in something I don't know how to define. I find myself much more closer to Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, that we create meaning for ourselves, and then that becomes the thrust of who we are and what we do. And that for me is as well as my children, but that for me is poetry. And whatever that is for you, work toward that creatively. Work toward that. Make that part of who you are, and take it very, very seriously, even if you don't take yourself seriously. 90% of my day is like a Monty Python skit, but not funny. And then the 10% that involves writing, I take deadly seriously.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, everybody who came out. It's a good crowd. Barbara, I see there. A few others still hanging around. See Jen.
We have Lucy Atkins as well.
Yeah, Lucy, there you are. But really happy everybody came out. This is good.
Wonderful. And I do have this recorded. Once I figure out how to take it from the cloud and put it onto a DVD or something, I will have that available. So I've never done this before, this Zoom cloud thing. So we'll see how it goes. If I can figure it out, I will send you a DVD of the reading. Okay.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, too.
Cool.
All right.
I think that does it.
Anything else?
Check out the books.
Oh, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, everyone, for coming.
Yep.
Yes, thank you all so much. Thank you so much. So many lovely, wonderful comments. It really helps. It does. It's difficult to read kind of to yourself audibly.
Yeah.
So it's really nice to see that. Thank you, everyone.
Right.
Yeah,
And Serena, I'll do my best. I will, I'll do my best to get his reading out there.
Well, it's fine. It's, I don't know how most of this stuff works either.
Good.
It's all new to me too right now. So we'll just work with it and keep our heads up and move forward. And I'll try and I'll stay healthy and happy and safe and and your families.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Concentrate on what you have some control over when there's so much you can't. Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah, and maybe sometime down the road, it'd be nice to actually see you in person. Maybe out there or somewhere. Be happy to meet you.
Yeah, that would be lovely. I would love to come out to Nebraska. I was so April. I was so looking forward to actually visiting colleges. It's so this has been an incredible experience. It has. I've done a few of these, and this is without a shadow of a doubt the best. I mean, in terms of the best, turn out the best, with comments and just I got more of a sense of an audience than usual, which is nice. Good. But nothing is like actually being there.
True. That's true.
And actually being able to shake hands. Oh, we probably won't be able to shake hands for the next few years.
I know. Yep.
Good question. Would have it been better to have the mutes off so you could hear people clapping or not?
Oh, no, well, I know. I guess it's one of those things where it's like, I want to say yes, but at the same time, then I'm sure someone's dog is barking and someone else is, brushing their teeth while they're doing it, whatever.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
yeah. No, it's fine. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Well, Chad, how do we end this now?
I think everybody just runs away. I think how many we got here? This is your Zoom room. I don't know.
We're down 40 people now, so we're down to 11, which 3 of those are us.
Okay.
So yeah.
We could do this.
Goodbye. That's good.
Nice. Final words. Her final word. So, all right. We'll see you on the flip side.
Take care.
Take care.
Okay. Bye-bye.
See you, John.